Some nights Ethan Carter still reached across the empty side of the bed, half expecting to find Sarah there, but grief had taken her too soon, and with her, nearly everything else he valued. His home, his savings, his sense of direction. What remained was his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, the only light left in his darkened world. She was the reason he kept moving forward, even when it felt impossible, even when he wondered if the world had any more mercy to offer. That's why when he found the listing for the strange floating cabin on the Alpine lake, he spent their last $1,000 to claim it. The locals called it cursed. The realtor practically begged him to take it off her hands, but Ethan didn't see a curse. He saw a chance, a place away from everything that reminded him of loss, a place where Emma could laugh again. The 400-year-old cabin sat on massive cedar logs lashed with iron, rising and falling gently with the rhythm of the lake, its creaks and groans like lullabies against the quiet mountains. The first night they slept there, Ethan thought it might all collapse, but instead, the morning sunlight danced through its diamond-paned windows, and Emma's smile returned for the first time since the funeral. What neither of them knew was that the cabin held secrets carved into its very bones, secrets left behind by a mysterious craftsman 4 centuries ago, secrets that would test their courage, their trust, and their bond in ways they could never imagine. Days turned into weeks, and the cabin revealed itself as something more than just a structure. Every carved beam seemed alive, every joint impossibly precise, every groove in the wood telling a story of animals leaping, fish swimming, birds in mid-flight as if the very forest had been captured in its heart. Emma loved to trace the carvings with her fingers, whispering that it felt like the cabin was listening. Ethan, a carpenter by trade, couldn't deny the artistry. It was beyond anything he'd ever seen. The shelves seemed to hold more than their dimensions allowed, the air always fresh as if the house breathed with them, and the smoke from the hearth never lingered but escaped perfectly through the chimney. Neighbors told stories of its builder, Magnus Ericson, a ghostly craftsman who appeared in the late 1600s, built marvels and vanished. At first, Ethan dismissed it as folklore, but the longer he lived in the cabin, the harder it became to ignore the sense of design that anticipated their every need. It was Emma who noticed the loose stone at the base of the hearth. Her fingers tapped it, and instead of granite, it sounded hollow. Together they pried it open and found not stone at all but a wooden panel pivoting on hidden hinges. Beneath it lay a box, heavy and ornate, carved with dragons and a depiction of the very cabin they lived in, floating at the center of the lake. Inside were journals, maps, tokens, and puzzle boxes, all bearing the mark of Magnus Ericson. And written on the first page of one journal was the line that made Ethan's skin crawl. The private observations and designs of Magnus Ericson, year of our Lord, 1689. May these words find worthy eyes when the time is right. The journals revealed more than history, they revealed philosophy. Magnus wrote of building not against nature but with it, shaping beams while the trees still lived, inviting stones into place rather than forcing them, asking the lake's permission before laying the first log. To him wood held memory, stone held wisdom, and water was the balance between them. Emma, with her child's intuition, grasped what her father struggled to understand. Magnus hadn't built a house, he had grown it. And the box held maps that showed more than the lake as it appeared today. It revealed hidden caves, underwater structures, and mysterious sites marked with the same tree and water symbol carved into tokens. One puzzle box contained an antique compass unlike any Ethan had ever seen. its crystalline needle glowing faintly and refusing to point north. Instead, it pulled steadily toward a remote section of shoreline. They followed, hiking deep into untouched forest until they discovered something astonishing. Beneath a mountain tarn, visible through crystal water, lay the submerged ruins of another Magnus creation, a circular foundation of stone as precise as the cabin itself. Nearby, hidden beneath cairns, were more maps linking at least 7 sites around the lake, connected by symbols and geometry that suggested a vast system working in harmony with the natural world. Emma looked at her father and said simply, "It's like he built a secret world and left it waiting for us." Not long after that discovery, their peace was broken. A man named Marcus Webb appeared at their dock, well-dressed, polite, but with the aura of a predator cloaked in manners. He offered to buy the cabin on behalf of collectors, hinting that its value could set Emma up for life. Ethan refused, but Webb's in turn. Interest deepened when he glimpsed the compass in Emma's hands. He recognized it instantly, and though he masked it with smooth words, his eyes betrayed hunger. Webb wasn't just a collector. He was part of something larger, something that had been seeking Magnus' legacy for generations. He returned with men, with surveying equipment, with legal papers claiming historical jurisdiction. He brought along so-called experts who asked the wrong questions, not about preservation, but about functionality, about how Magnus designs worked. Professor Adelaide Wells, a real historian with decades of Norse research, arrived to help Ethan and Emma, confirming that their discoveries were authentic and revolutionary. Magnus wasn't just a craftsman. He was an innovator centuries ahead of his time. But Webb was determined. He began circling like a shark, using law, intimidation, and surveillance to close in. Emma, sharper than her years, told her father, "He doesn't want to protect Magnus' work. He wants to take it and sell it to people who won't care what it means." As they dug deeper, the story behind Magnus himself emerged. Hidden in journals and within a silver locket found in one of his books, they discovered his lost love, Astrid. She was to join him in the new world, but plague took her before she could sail. Magnus poured his grief into the lake, into the structures he built, into puzzles that demanded patience, wisdom, and respect to unlock. Astrid's portrait was tucked in the locket, her eyes filled with sorrow and love, and her letters, preserved in underwater chambers, revealed that she had shared his vision, sketching gardens and communities meant for families yet unborn. Magnus wasn't building for himself, but for the future, for those who had known grief and still sought meaning. Ethan, who had lost Sarah, felt an ache of kinship across centuries. Emma saw it too, whispering, "He was like you, Daddy." He lost someone but still built something beautiful. Piece by piece, they realized Magnus' legacy wasn't just architectural, it was emotional. It was about survival through creation, about turning pain into something that could sustain life long after he was gone. And yet, it was also clear Magnus had anticipated danger. Hidden schematics showed defensive designs, buildings meant to sink beneath water if threatened, puzzles that only yielded to the worthy. He had known that one day, someone like Webb would come. The most remarkable find came when Emma traced symbols from Astrid's locket across the cabin's walls, revealing a hidden chamber even Ethan had missed. Inside lay a carved whale-tooth scrimshaw, etched with microscopic precision, telling Magnus' entire story. His love, his loss, his building, his vision. But the final third of the scrimshaw revealed something beyond imagination. A floating city. interconnected structures designed to rise from the lake when the time was right, adapting with seasons, purifying water, creating sustainable communities centuries before anyone dreamed of climate change. Professor Wells called it revolutionary, but Emma called it a puzzle waiting for them to finish. Yet danger pressed closer. Webb arrived with federal marshals and forged documents demanding entry. In a standoff on the cabin's deck, Emma clutched the scrimshaw as it warmed in her hands, and the etched figures shifted as if alive, responding to her touch. Everyone saw it, and Webb's mask cracked. He shouted, demanded the artifact, his obsession laid bare. Ethan realized then that Webb's motives weren't about history or even wealth. They were about power. He wanted Magnus' secret network, whatever it could unlock, and he would stop at nothing. They were no longer just guardians of a legacy. They were defenders of something alive, something waiting to awaken. The pressure mounted. Surveillance vehicles lingered on the ridges, strangers watched them from afar, and Webb returned with new tactics, legal and otherwise. Meanwhile, Ethan, Emma, and Professor Wells pressed forward, diving into Magnus' submerged structures. They discovered chambers where water flowed through carved channels, purifying itself naturally, stone furniture designed not just for use, but for resonance, puzzle locks that only opened when pressed in harmony with natural rhythms. In one hidden vault, they found Astrid's letters to Magnus, her vision of a shared future woven into his. It became clear that Magnus had designed a complete system: architecture, water management, gardens, and energy, an ecological blueprint meant to outlast centuries. More than $25 million in value, Professor Wells said, but Emma put it more simply. It's not money, it's a gift. Webb, however, was closing in, and the scrimshaw hinted at a heart of the network, a central command hidden deep beneath the lake. If they could reach it, they might activate Magnus' defenses, but time was running out. Ethan knew the choice was coming: either protect Magnus' vision or risk losing it to those who would twist it for power. The confrontation peaked when Webb returned with full authority, armed with marshals and lawyers, waving papers meant to seize the property. But Magnus had planned for this moment centuries earlier. Guided by Emma's intuition, they unlocked the scrimshaw's hidden sequence and discovered that the entire network was alive, waiting for the right guardians. The lake stirred, currents shifted, and somewhere deep below, the floating city began to respond, its structures designed to vanish when threatened, to protect themselves until humanity was ready. Webb raged, demanding the artifacts, but Magnus' defenses denied him, leaving him furious but powerless. As night fell, Ethan held Emma close, realizing that their grief had brought them here not by chance but by design. Magnus had known that only those who understood loss and love could carry his vision forward. And now, that responsibility belonged to them. For Emma, it was never about money or fame or even history. It was about hope, about protecting a gift meant for future generations. And so their quiet life was gone, replaced by a mission to safeguard a secret the world didn't yet know it needed. Because sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't gold or land, but wisdom hidden in plain sight, waiting for hearts strong enough to bear it. And if you want to hear what happens when they reach the heart of Magnus' floating city, make sure you're subscribed, because the next chapter will take this story to depths you'll never forget.